cybersecurity, and we know that our information is being protected just the way we want it to. Thank you so much for joining us, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I guess Africa and Kenya in particular is changing. The trends are changing. We're getting more and more connected to technology, but with it comes a lot of challenges. How would you assess the growth of cybersecurity today?
Well, certainly, as penetration increases, so does the possibility of attack. Checkpoint, which is the world leader at information security, for the last few years, we've been tracking attacks across the world.
Yeah.
So we have about 300,000 different nodes and unique IP addresses. So we get to see what's happening. So it can also help us predict.
Yeah.
And we noticed that we have what we call a threat index, where we rank countries at how we think, how many attacks they're getting. And in fact, last month, Kenya actually dropped from 47 to 83. So it shows there are more and more attacks that are being targeted towards Kenya.
Okay. And when you say there are more and more attacks being targeted towards Kenya, does this mean that we are being reckless in terms of not wanting to protect information, critical information?
Not necessarily. Of course, the more, for example, if you look at the undersea cables, what they did is that they increased the number of people that have access to the internet. And as you have more people, you have a bigger attack surface.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we notice a lot is that there's a lot of new malware and a lot of mobile malware. So because Kenya and Africa is mobile first, we're a prime target for mobile malware.
Okay, let's talk about, there are a lot of terms that we probably do not understand in the digital world, in the tech world. But for people or for companies who are really taking this really seriously in terms of information security, what is the difference between data attacks and data breaches? Well,
a data attack is if your data gets exposed intentionally, not intentionally. A good example is Edward Snowden, who was able to expose the US data. That's data attack. So now a data breach is far wider in scope. So it could be anything. It could be somebody manipulating the integrity of your systems. So for example, if you were a bank and I had 100,000 shillings on my account, if I can get to change that and add 2 zeros, I've just become a millionaire over a day. That's more of a data attack. So that's really the difference.
That's a data breach.
Yes, so a data breach.
All right. Of course, now there are major data attacks that we have seen that have occurred across East Africa. It's not just Kenya, but we have seen the same thing happening in Rwanda. The same thing has happened, in Uganda as well. Tell us about how important it is to protect data.
Well, it's very important because you have to look at the value the data is to you. In some cases, the data is actually, it's the value of the company. You look at some companies, what drives them is intellectual property. So if you get to lose that, then you have nothing. You look at companies that typically drive their business online. If they're not available, then they have no money. So data is the new gold.
All right. From where you sit, which would you say were some of the biggest major attacks in the East African region?
Biggest major can be difficult to say because we don't have any regulation that requires victims to come forward with information. But in terms of volumes, that's information we see. If you look at Kenya this year, the top 3 attacks that we've seen, the first has been Confika, Confika family. It's been around since about 2007. It typically targets Windows operating systems.
Yeah.
The second one is Sality, very common, and these two are in the top 5 anywhere around the world. The third that makes Kenya very unique is Hummingbird, because Hummingbird is not in the top 5 in many other places around the world. And Hummingbird is actually malware that targets Android phones.
Oh.
And that's really the new, that's the new cheese.
All right. So when you talk about Hummingbird, I guess a lot of people definitely not even know what we're talking about. And despite the fact that they even hold, Android phones, because the penetration right now is really growing at a fast rate. So how does it dig into people's information?
Well, Hummingbird is actually what used to be an unknown malware until about January this year when we managed to pick it up. So it's actually what we call a rootkit. So what a rootkit does is it tries to, well, when you have a rootkit on your phone or on your PC, it takes control over the entire device. Now, the attacker that has it installed or running on your phone or your PC is able to do anything with it. So think about it from your perspective. If somebody could remotely control and see everything on your phone, think about the risk. Somebody can access your pictures. Somebody can see your bank password as you type it in. Somebody can actually use a remote access tool to actually transfer M-Pesa on your phone because they can now actually punch digits onto your phone. Somebody can use your GPS and know exactly where you are. Somebody can look at your contacts. I mean, everything. If you have corporate mail on your phone, somebody has access to that.
All right. Okay. So besides, the Hummingbird, I guess there are other ways in which people are falling prey to, cybercrime. What are some of those areas that you would say maybe make us become very vulnerable to cybercrime?
Well, as a whole, what we see as the shift now is two things. We've seen an almost 50% growth in unknown attacks, and these are also very targeted attacks. So what we see now is that the hackers are being a bit more focused on what they actually want to achieve, as opposed to maybe 10 years ago when they sowed and hoped to catch something. Now they are very, very targeted on what they want to, who they want to attack and what they want to achieve.
All right. So what we're seeing on our screens is sort of like a map that shows, the vulnerability levels around the world. And from what we are seeing, I guess when it comes to Africa, I don't know if you can just take a look at the screens over there. So you're able to probably explain to us what is going on. You can actually almost see that there's quite a lot of traffic when it comes to cybercrime. I don't know if that country over there in the red is Kenya.
As you can see, that's Kenya. Exactly.
Exactly.
So this is real life data.
Yeah.
It's live data is happening now. So those are attacks that are coming in as we speak.
Yeah.
Like I spoke to you earlier about the 300,000 different points that we're actually monitoring. So you can see the source country and destination country. And at the bottom of that screen, you can actually see the actual attack being used.
So there's quite a lot of traffic in China when it comes to cybercrime, the in and out. And we can actually take it all the way to Texas. Is that Texas?
That's California.
Yeah. Wow. That is so interesting. So at the end of it all, do you have, say, a list of the kind of information or probably data on the kind of information where we are seeing a lot of traffic for cybercrime?
Well, I mean, it's all over, because one of the interesting things about cybercrime and malware is it doesn't discriminate.
Yeah.
Everybody is fair game. It doesn't matter whether you're sitting in Palo Alto or you're sitting in the Kalahari, you're fair game to a cyber criminal.
And what are some of the considerations you have, say, because that is a live cyber attack threat map.
Yes.
But how do you quantify what is the criteria that you use to actually get all that data?
So the criteria is very simple. Those are actual attacks that we are seeing, attacks that we actually know of. That's why you can see we have the attack name, because that's something that we actually know of.
Right.
And in some cases, because we also deal with unknown attacks, we're also able to show you previously unknown attacks that we've now managed to pick up.
Okay. And going forward, how best do you think people should be able to protect their data, both on the phones that are seemingly increasingly vulnerable to all this cybercrime?
Well, to try and get productivity, mobility is being embraced a lot, and more so in East Africa. So one of the things I would imagine that any CIO or any CISO should be focusing on is how to secure mobile access. Now we need to change our approach from trying to manage the end user's device, because not many users are comfortable having a company manage a device that belongs to them.
Yeah.
So we need to move that approach so the business can actually protect their information. So we at Checkpoint have a product called Capsule Workspace.
Yeah. Yeah.
And typically what this does, it creates a secure container on the phone, so the business can keep their data on a container on a phone. So if the phone gets into the wrong hands or is lost, the business does not lose any data.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, thank you so much, Michael. We do appreciate the time taken to come talk to us about cybersecurity and staying away from data attacks and threats and how you can actually mitigate them altogether. Michael Tumusime is the head of security evangelists at Checkpoint East Africa, and they actually deal with a lot of technology softwares, and you should check them out as well and check out that security threat map as well that they have, and you'll be able to find out how much of your data might be vulnerable to all these attacks.